In 12 years of mentoring IT project managers, I noticed that most of PMs spend a tremendous amount of effort just to keep the project under control. So they spend all this energy and time on firefighting with problems that they didn't anticipate or the work they didn't plan. But unfortunately, they mostly focus on the symptoms of the problem, not on the root cause. And I totally get it because you are almost always overwhelmed and stressed, and it feels like fixing this problem at the moment is the best solution. But unfortunately, these problems stack up, and in the long run, you'll be fighting with them over and over again. That's why, while working with hundreds of project managers, I identified 5 typical symptoms that your project management is disconnected. And it means you need to put some efforts into tailoring your processes and tools to fix the root cause of the problem. And here's the most typical sign of disconnected project management is that you as a project manager, you sit on meetings for 5+ hours per day. And the rest of the day you need to use to capture all the information inside your project management tool or write meeting notes. This sign can have multiple root causes and they can all contribute to your overwhelmed stress and frustrations. But most commonly you just combine way too many roles and you don't delegate enough responsibilities to your team. For example, you need to fulfill responsibilities of a project manager and at the same time you need to collect requirements from stakeholders and clients and customers, and therefore you are a business analyst. Or another typical root cause is that your customers and stakeholders, they don't understand or don't know a requirements management workflow. They don't know the life cycle of requirements, so they believe that the best approach is to just communicate with you on a meeting and explain what needs to be done. In addition to that, they believe that you need to be present in all those conversations because you are the one who organizes the requirements. And this leads us to the second sign of the disconnected project management. And usually it looks like this. To get an actual status of a task, user story, or an epic, you need to speak to a person, and that person needs to explain what's actually going on with that task, because it's still in progress, but there are many stages of a life cycle of that requirement. For example, your customers ask for a new user story, but you don't know whether they actually ask you to commit to it right away, use your time and energy to collect the requirements. And then you also don't know from the in-progress status whether they read the acceptance criteria, looked at the designs and approved them. You can imagine if you need to manage 10, 20, 50 tasks each week, some of them will require this constant communication. What's going on with this task? What's the status of this user story? Have your customers approved it or not? And this is a huge waste of time which forces you to become a micromanager for your team. And you don't have this bird's-eye view on all the user stories and requirements of your project. Okay, let's move on to the sign number 3 of the disconnected project management. And imagine or remember the situation when customers fight for each hour or each dollar in your estimates. For example, you provided the breakdown of a deliverable with estimates, or you finished the sprint planning, and now customers say, no, this task is not 16 hours, it's actually 10 hours. Or this task is actually 1 line of code. Why do you need 4 hours for that? Sounds familiar? Well, that's first of all a trust issue. But the root cause of this trust issue is a bit deeper. You see, we often assume that our project owners, customers and clients, they understand how the project management framework actually works. But that's not true. In most cases, they see your team and your project management approach as a black box. They talk to it, to this black box, and the outcome from this black box is your estimates and sometimes deliverables and products they asked. As a result, they don't understand what happens inside that box, how you make decisions, how you make estimates, what challenges you include, what risks you include in those estimates. So they want to understand it, but they don't have a better way rather than challenge your estimations. The best solution here is to show them behind the scenes of your project management approach and teach them the ways you manage this project, the way you break down the tasks, the way you estimate, the way you do risk management. And more importantly, you need to explain to them what's their role in this black box. Okay, the next sign is super common across all the industry because it relates to risk management. Again, imagine that you build an excellent risk management framework. You identify risk, you capture them in risk register, you analyze them, then you develop risk response plans. But after that, those risk response plans either don't materialize in tasks, and your stakeholders just talk about risks on the meetings and assume that that's the way the risk will disappear. Or what's even worse, your risk response plans become an additional work for your whole team. So you have your sprints already planned to full capacity and all risk management activities are on top of that work. In both cases, it's just additional work and stress for your team and a lot of frustration for you. The solution is easy but not simple. You need to integrate your risk management efforts into your daily work. It should become a part of your efforts to deliver either a sprint or each separate deliverable. And this leads us to the fifth sign of disconnected project management, and it's a byproduct of the previous one. So you often notice that people do a lot of work, but when you ask them what they are working on, they work on tasks that you didn't plan. They are not connected to specific deliverables or specific user stories. Yes, it's a valuable work, it's a necessary work, but you didn't plan it. So in general, it's called scope creep, but the root causes of the scope creep can be different. From one side, it can be those risk response plans that you develop through your risk management efforts. On the other hand, it could be poor requirements that you didn't decompose enough. Likewise, your definitions of done can be inaccurate, and you need to review the definition of done for tasks, for user stories, and for each stage of the requirements lifecycle for those user stories. All in all, your goal is to ensure that you can connect each piece of work, each task, to either one of the deliverables or user story or epic. So if you want to be a great IT project manager, you need to develop a skill of creating tailored project management approach. And let me tell you one thing, Scrum is not enough to run IT projects. All projects in the IT industry will soon be hybrid project management approaches. You'll need to develop skills of combining plan-driven approaches with agile frameworks, using techniques and tools from different worlds, and you need to do it in such a way that your project management approach streamlined from end to end. So if you want to be a project manager capable of doing all of that, check the resources in the description. I'll leave you something valuable there. But now you must be wondering if these are the signs of disconnected project management. How does a tailored project management approach looks like? In this case, I recommend that you watch this video next, because it will explain how project management should connect across the whole framework. Click this video now and we'll continue our discussion there. I'll see you soon.